So the Flip-A-Clip contest is finally over. In this video I'm going to show you guys the results, how I placed. I'm going to talk about how I made the episode in the first place, and my future plans for the Pudge Master series in general. So let's get into that. So I've been wanting to make an animated series for a while, and I've been working on this Pudge Master universe for a while, and then this Flip-A-Clip contest just came up, and it was the perfect chance to just work on it and put it out there. Out of about 1,000 or so submissions, I came in the top 20, which I'm really proud about. My episode is actually in the Flip-A-Clip app watch section if you guys want to watch it there. But yeah, I'm really happy. The experience was fun. It was a lot of work, and I'm a little bit disappointed with there were some scenes I wanted to put in that I didn't have time to put in. But overall, I'm happy with the final episode. The way I wrote it was a little bit different than how I would have done it if I was making it without a time limit. This Flip-A-Clip contest was basically make a 1 minute or longer episode of an original character and have it have a beginning, middle, and end, or at least even if it's open-ended at the ending, to be satisfying enough that you can feel like it concluded. And I was really trying to cram a lot of story into that. I ended up making it 3 minutes with the credits included. I was really cramming a lot in there, and I knew that this episode wasn't going to be the end for Pudge Master. I wanted to keep it going, so I was doing my best to set up a lot of stuff and make sure that the series has continuity going forward. I felt like I had him ramble a lot, saying that he had a sister and everything. I just wanted to kind of establish that. I would have liked to minimize that a little bit and slow the pace down, which I will do in the future episodes. I'll probably retcon some stuff because the video game aspects of this series weren't supposed to be as pronounced. The levels and the stats were supposed to be more like a sub ability, not necessarily the main thing, but I needed a reason for him to be able to, do something in the series. I needed a quick way to kind of show what was going on. Even the portal wasn't the exact way I wanted him to get there, but I ended up really liking that. So I'm just gonna take what I have from this series and use it as a jumping off point for the next steps, which is a full season. I'm looking for 12 episodes. I've kind of decided that'll be a good place to start and bring a nice character arc to a conclusion, and then maybe do a season 2 depending on how season 1 goes. Otherwise, I might do My Hero Academia and do 1 season and then do a movie, big extravaganza movie type thing, and then do the second season. It all depends. If I feel like it, I'll just go season 1, season 2, or I'll go season 1 and then a movie. But enough about that. I actually want to show you guys a little bit of how I created this episode. It was almost 200 hours of work, missing a lot of sleep, so I want to really show you all the things that went into the episode itself. After I did the pre-production, I did all of the rough animation pretty much, just to see where the episode would go. I cut it up into a rough episode with some sound effects and some of the voice acting, just to see how the story would play out, how the scenes would flow into each other. Then I made some necessary adjustments and started in on the actual animation, finishing things up. Drawing Mason was fairly easy because I've been drawing him for a long time now. Yuri was okay. He's a newer character for me, but I got used to him pretty quickly because I had to draw him a lot. The Minotaurs was a little bit of a struggle because I'm not the best at drawing creatures. I've been working on it, and these are humanoid creatures, so making them look not weird, making them make sense, was definitely something I had to work on. First I got reference of an actual bull, and then a minotaur from Greek mythology, but I'm this isn't really working. It wasn't looking the way I wanted it to, so I actually found reference of minotaurs from anime, how they would bring it into that style, and then I did some sketches and really tried to understand how the face of a minotaur is constructed, and then I was able to pretty much get the grasp of it enough. The main action scene in the beginning, as you could tell, is one of the most animation intensive parts of this whole episode. There was going to be more to the fight scene, but again, time constraints, so I had to make this as good as it could be. took a lot of inspiration from the scene from Solo Leveling, Igris versus these orcs right here, and I really like the way that the camera pans and moves back and the nice sense of movement in this scene, so I took a lot of inspiration from that, like heavy inspiration, and then I added my own thing in there as well. I'm really proud of the scene because not only did it take a lot of work, but I feel like the result was good. We started off directly on Yuri, and there's a lot of stuff in the scene that's kind of going on. Like, there's the main action that's actually happening, and then there's like secondary actions happening as well, and things that might not be as noticeable, things you might have to rewatch it for. Like here, Yuri's eyes are green to start out with, and then they switch to blue as he's using his spiritual energy. I thought that was a cool thing to add. He cuts this Minotaur's arm off with the fire powers. You can actually see it fly away, land, and it kind of pops back up after it lands, and then it settles, as well as the sword kind of spins and flies and sticks into the ground. I wanted that to be satisfying, but not take away from the main action that was going on. To animate the background moving back, and when Yuri jumps back away from the Minotaur and gathers himself for the rush of punches, I actually drew a long background, and then I would just move it accordingly. So I did the animation first, I put a rough background in, of course, for the rough animation, and then I took this as a reference, made a super long background, and then I just put that background in and moved it a little bit. I made a video about making moving backgrounds, which I used a similar process to this. The only thing was that I wanted to keep this all in Flip-A-Clip. Like, I wanted to do everything in Flip-A-Clip except the final editing, of course. So I wanted to do everything I possibly could in Flip-A-Clip. Then when he speeds forward, I blurred this background a lot to emphasize the fast motion. I would have liked to have this punching last like a half a second longer, but I worked with what I had, and I made sure that every frame there was an increasing number of fists on screen, so you could see that he's increasing the intensity of the punches. And then he finally hits a soft spot and he stabs through the Minotaur, and you can even see he's going to use the fire from the inside out, which I thought would be an interesting way to use his powers, because we've all seen fire powers before. Like, we've all seen like armor and things like that, so I wanted to kind of find a way to use it uniquely. Now, the impact frames for this, I took a lot of inspiration from Fire Force, and I definitely would tell you guys, if you're ever struggling to animate something, or you don't know how to do a certain thing, just look at something that's already done it similarly. Like, I looked at Fire Force because the way they animate fire seems approachable, but it's still satisfying, so I was able to take a lot of inspiration from that. And this scene with Shinra, when he flares up his feet, the impact frames are like red and yellow, and then yellow and black, and then red and yellow again. And I was able to take that and apply it to this scene here and get a really cool result. I hid the word subscribe in the fire. It goes by super quick, so you don't really see it, but I actually hid a couple of things in like individual frames for this animation, like the word titanium here on Yuri's arm, because that's what the armor is made out of, and little stuff like that. I thought it was cool to just put that in. Also, what you guys probably didn't notice is that there are only like 7 or 8 individual backgrounds. I just reused them very well. A lot of shows do this, and it's actually really smart because drawing backgrounds is pretty labor intensive because they have to be more detailed than the characters are, and you need a lot of them. So if you have a specific location or something that's easy to replicate, you draw the background as big as you can so you can use a lot of space in it. Then you zoom into parts and just reuse it. That's all I did. For this scene where Mason fell, I actually used a longer vertical background, and I just panned down on it as he fell, and it worked out pretty well. Now, there was a huge chunk of this episode that was just dialogue and a little bit of exposition. I would have liked to not have that much of it, but it just had to be in there for this episode to make things make a little bit of sense and to kind of illustrate the stakes going forward. I was smart about my pencil mileage, so to speak, and how many individual and unique drawings I used. If I could hold a drawing, I held it. If I could copy parts of it and use it in other places, I would do that. I feel like it's not too noticeable, and it really saved me time so I could focus more on the action. For the lip syncing, it was actually really simple. I watched a couple tutorials, one from Dong Chang, he's really great, and I learned that with anime lip syncing, I just got tongue-tied on lip syncing, that's funny. But basically, it's just an open mouth shape, a closed mouth shape, and a half open mouth shape. It's just 3. And it's really simple, you just put them in accordingly where it lines up with the dialogue. Now for my animation, I used 4 mouth shapes for pretty much all of the dialogue and talking scenes. I would have the closed shape, I would have half closed, so it was just barely open. Then I would have half open and open. And I would just cycle through these. So what I would do is I would draw the still frames the way I wanted them to be, and I would make sure that they lined up and that the character acting was good. I inserted as much movement into the dialogue scene as possible to keep it engaging, but once I had that, I would go through and plan out which mouth shapes would go where. Flip-a-Clip is really great for dialogue because they have the audio track right there. You can scrub through it and hear it actually, which is really nice, and then you can quickly just play it back and check it. So I went through this whole dialogue part, and I would just put the first letter or the abbreviation of which mouth shape I needed. So I would do O for open, I would, H for half open, etc. But I find that that's still not enough because I don't know how the mouth will actually line up with the dialogue yet, just by putting the initial of the mouth shape. So what I would do is, right next to it, I would do a quick little scribble of the mouth shape, and then when I play it back, I can kind of see that mouth moving, that little tiny mouth, and know that that's the proper shape for that frame. This really sped up the lip syncing part for me, and also, when you have a still frame, like right here, and your character's going to be looking the same, you can actually copy the mouth shape. So let's say I need 2 half open, 2 closed, and 1 open. All I have to do is draw the half open and the open once, and then just copy it. It's simple as that. Still tedious, but once you get going, it's just really straightforward. Also, a little tip is to match the emotions of the characters. So the closed mouth shape could be a smile, it could be a frown, it could be a smirk, and the mouth shapes can look different depending on how the character is emoting, but they could still be the same mouth shapes, so that's also really cool. Now, even though Yuri's action scene was really cool, I think my favorite scene to watch and rewatch and work on was the scene where Mason uses his judo throw skill. Now, this is not how skills are going to work in the series going forward, you guys. This was just for this episode. I will retcon that a little bit. It's not going to be drastic. He'll still be able to use his skills, but we're going to make it work a different way. But for the actual animation, I wanted it to be impactful because this episode initially had the super long action scene of Yuri. It was going to be way longer, and then it would kind of taper off at the end. But as I'm working on it, I've realized that we need to show, this is called Pudge Master, not Yuri, so we need to actually show Mason do something and do something epic. So I wanted to make when he first unlocks that judo skill as cool as possible. So I had the words judo actually just slam down with impact, and then we zoom into the O. And again, I had to use that skill route to make it make sense. So the skill activates, and I'm really happy with it. It could have been even more epic, of course. With animation, it's all about time. So if you have 6 months to work on a scene and you know what you're doing, you can make it 10 times more epic. Versus if you have 2 hours, you make the most epic thing you can in 2 hours. Like the actual throw, when he throws the Minotaur down, I had to just kind of throw in 2 quick impact frames and let that be that. If I had more time, I would have tore up the ground and made all this crazy stuff happen. It could have been way more epic, but this was cool. A nice little way to end the episode, and then you can kind of see Mason's locked in because he had to lock in to throw the Minotaur with that much power. And then he comes back to himself, and his eyes change from blue to green as well, because in the Pudge Master universe, your eyes change when you're using spiritual energy. I don't know if this is going to be an every time thing, like every time you use spiritual energy they change, or if it just depends on what mode you're in. Still working some things out, but I felt like it was really cool to have him show that visual representation of using the skill. And then I just kind of threw in that he went to level 1 because I wanted to give this episode like a satisfying end, and I thought that would just be it. This is not how, I feel like I've said this a lot, but things will be different in episode 2. I'll have more time to work on it, and there'll be more depth to the power system. Now, I did not do any shading on this episode because, to be honest with you, if I had done shading, it would have been 30 seconds, not 3 minutes. There wouldn't have been enough time for that. But I did do some compositing, so I'm going to show you how I did that. Now, usually when I make illustrations and animations, there is a step I like to add where I duplicate the line work and then I slightly blur it. It just adds a little bit of depth. It looks cool. I like the way it looks. I heard this from somewhere. I don't know where I heard it from, but blurring, like duplicating your layer and blurring it, it adds a really cool effect. You can even do this not just with the lines, but with the actual colored artwork. So duplicate the whole thing, blur the entire thing, and then you can overlay it, and it looks really cool. Sometimes it's a little too much, but you can adjust it and get a cool result. Now, first of all, wanting to stay in the Flip-A-Clip app to do everything, I was wondering how I could add this effect in here. Since Flip-A-Clip doesn't have, at least I didn't think they had, a way for me to do this, so I was really like, do I have to export all the lines? It's gonna take a lot of time. But Clip does have is this glow effect. They've had it for a long time, and I was able to actually add a black glow to the lines, very minimal glow, and that gave almost the exact same effect as adding in the blurred outlines. It solidified everything, gave it a little bit more punch and depth, especially without the shading. It just really worked. And I have to say, I'm really happy with how this episode came out, animating it 100% in Flip-A-Clip, doing the backgrounds in there. Flip-A-Clip does have a 10 layer limit. If you didn't know that, it's just that once you hit 10, you can't add any more. So I was a little bit worried about this, working up to this this main action scene, because there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, you're gonna have the fire effects, you're gonna have the armor, the spiritual energy effects, and I needed them all to be on separate layers. Usually when I work, I use a lot of layers, but when you're limited like this, you have to find a way to condense that. So, like for instance, if I'm making armor, usually any other time, I'll separate them into 3 parts. I'll have the base color, I'll have the dark shade, and I'll have the highlights, and they'll all be on their own layer. And then I'll even sometimes play around with the overlay and the blur features to get them to look the way I want. But for this one, I made a couple of tests to see how they would look, and I just put them all on one singular layer. Now, to initially draw them, I put them on their own separate layer, and then I just merged them down. I did this a lot for this whole episode. I would just make as many layers as I needed, and then as soon as I didn't need an element anymore, or I was confident in how it looked, I would merge it down. If I wasn't sure, or I wanted to make sure that I could go back later, like undo it, I would copy the file itself, because that's how you can make a little backup, and then I would take the copied file and work in that one to make the grand changes and all that. Now, even though this video is long, I did kind of speed run through this whole creation process. The final thing I wanted to talk about was the fire itself, because animating fire, it can be a little bit of a chore. It depends on the style of fire you use and how realistic it's gonna look. Sometimes getting the motion to look right can be a little difficult, but for this scene, I'm pretty confident with animating fire just by itself, so I wasn't too worried about that. But I was wondering how to get the fire to look cool and like fire. So first, I had the base layer, which is the orange color. And no matter what type of fire you're gonna do, you always basically just start with a base layer and a base color. Now from here, I really leaned into Fire Force because their fire looks simple to replicate, but it still is really cool to look at. I took this screenshot from the Fire Force opening, and I felt like this is exactly how I wanted my fire to look. Basically, you have the base color of the orange. This is how I broke it down. And if you guys want to replicate it, this is the simplest way to do it. You have the base color of the reddish orange. You're basically going to go through your entire scene and just animate the fire as you would, but just using this orange base color. Fill everything in and just use this, which is what I did. Then you have the second layer, which is the inside of the fire, the bright spots. Now, to be honest with you, when you're actually trying to do research and learn how Fire Force does their fire, you'll actually notice that there is a little bit of inconsistency in how they do it. I'm sure that's just because they have a lot of different animators working on different scenes. It always looks good, but there are different ways that they do it. Like right here where Shinra's coming in to be the hero that he is, it's more like just orange and they overlay a texture onto it and there's like a bright yellow outline, which is cool. And then you have this fire right here where it's like basically the orange base color, you have a white glowing core, and then you have a little bit of yellow put in the middle there, and this also works. There's some red glow here, but the style I really wanted to use was this one from the opening. It's super simple. The fire is like just a nice volumetric shape, and it felt like it would be the easiest for me to replicate. So back to the explanation. Once you do the orange base layer, you basically just come back through with a yellow color and fill in the hottest parts of the fire. And then you can actually set that to glow because you want that to glow a little bit. You can use an airbrush, you can use the flip-a-clip glow feature. It really is up to you. And then too, you're gonna go over, or at least I like to, you go over the edges of your fire with a more darker red orange, because actually the redder a fire is, the colder it is. The hotter a fire is, it's gonna be more blue and white, which is really cool. That's like science right there. But at the edges of your fire, you're gonna wanna add a little bit of that airbrush of the darker red. You can use alpha lock for this. Basically that means that what you add will not go outside of what's already there. So if I have a circle here and I put on alpha lock and I draw over it like really scribbly, those scribbles are not gonna go outside of the circle. So that's really cool. You could also get this effect with clipping mask, but then that means you need another layer. And yeah, that's pretty much where I'm gonna end it. There's so much that goes into animating this episode, both concepting, actual just animation work. There are a couple scenes I didn't really go into too much detail on. You guys can ask me questions. I always do my best to answer you. A lot of you have asked me for tutorials, but I was so busy I didn't have time to make them. So I'm gonna be working on some of those, so definitely get excited for that. And as far as Pudge Master goes, the extended version will come out. Hopefully I'll be able to give you guys a date soon, and then I'll start working on the actual season 1. There are a couple ways I could do it. I could just like do one episode and then release it immediately, or I could take the smart approach and do like 3 or 4 episodes, finish them, and then start releasing. So I'm not just like every time I have to release an episode like downing coffee and espresso trying to finish it before a deadline. That is possible, but it's not very long-term oriented. You can't keep that up, so I'm definitely gonna just produce this very smartly, and hopefully look for ways to make production easier, like 3D backgrounds, or maybe just getting better at drawing backgrounds in the first place. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to watch the pre-production, video that I did for this series, you can click right here, like and subscribe, and I'm excited to share with you a lot of bigger projects in the future. Also, in the time I've been working on videos and other stuff, we hit 900 subscribers, which I'm really grateful for. It's over 900 now, but I really wanted to thank you guys for coming along with me on this journey, and there's gonna be a lot more cool stuff happening. When we hit 1,000, I want to have a cool video for 1,000, because I feel like that's really substantial as a milestone. I mean, they're all substantial, but thank you guys for that, and just stay tuned. There's more happening.